Our next speaker is Mary Kellett. She's another one that I'm going to have to read for because otherwise I'll go on for way too long. Mary is a dear friend, and she is going to speak to you about Peter's story. Peter is Mary's son. And she is the founder and the director of Prenatal Partners for Life, which is a nonprofit ministry that offers support and information and encouragement to families that receive an adverse diagnosis before or after the birth of their child. And they've supported families in every state, 27 countries. Mary is married with 11 children, and her youngest child, Peter, went home to heaven in 2012. Please welcome Mary.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I run an organization, as Joe said, Prenatal Partners for Life, and it was started about a year after I had our 11th child, a little boy named Peter, and I just really felt called by the Lord to try to help other families because we had such a difficult time. And I'm going to share that story and a little bit about the background of what parents face who receive the news that their baby may not be healthy or have special needs. Blaise Pascal said, "Beware of knowledge that does not end in love." And that's what we have. We have so much knowledge. We have the ability to test prenatally for thousands of different conditions. And to make predictions about, what this baby's life is going to be like. But very often we act that we don't have the love to make good decisions. So this is a little preborn baby. This is actually one of the babies we helped. And they face huge obstacles to survive if they're diagnosed prenatally. There's pervasive prenatal testing and more tests all the time. It used to be, a short time ago, only women over the age of 35 were encouraged to get testing done, but now every pregnant woman, no matter what her age is, routinely receives a whole plethora of tests prenatally. I'm not saying that prenatal testing in itself is bad. There are some conditions that can be treated in utero to help the child before birth. This is little baby Neil who had hydrocephalus and baby Samuel, that's spina bifida. And that's becoming more and more common to treat some conditions in utero. But we have to be aware that there's oftentimes different motives. This is just a survey that was done, and 90% of the doctors responding considered abortion because of fatal fetal anomaly a justifiable treatment, and 63 considered abortion a justifiable treatment option for non-fatal anomalies. So a high percentage of doctors think that that is treatment. Oftentimes families that we've helped, they have tremendous pressure to abort the baby if the baby has been diagnosed with something. These are some of the terms our families have experienced: therapeutic abortion, early induction, humane abortion, saying goodbye early. A young girl we were helping, she did not even realize she was about to have an abortion. She said, no, they just told me it was saying goodbye early. And I said, well, when you're inducing a baby at 19 weeks, that baby's not going to live. You know, you're intentionally ending its life. One family was told, listen, this baby should have been miscarried. Just think of this as finishing a miscarriage that should have happened. Many are told, just end it and start over. You know, get pregnant again with a healthy baby. Don't put yourself through that. A new tactic that we're seeing more of are, they're told the statistics and made to feel dumb if they don't conform to the norm. So they're pressured into, you know, well, people don't carry these babies, you know, and you know, what's wrong with you? That you want to continue a pregnancy like this. It's a sad, sad fact that over 90% of babies are aborted with conditions like Down syndrome, spina bifida, cystic fibrosis. That's my little friend Ricky. This was one mom's experience. We helped her. She was given a 1 in 5 chance that her baby had Down syndrome, and then pressured to schedule termination. And when she refused, she was asked repeatedly if she realized that 92% of women with the same test results would terminate. So they tried to make her feel stupid for going against the norm. She said there was one appointment when 3 different people came into her room to recommend termination and confirm that she understood how high her risk was. I remember talking to this mom. This was a local mom we helped. She said it would take her days to recover after going to the doctor because she felt so attacked. So she finally switched doctors, and she found an OB who supported her decision. And her little boy was born with Down syndrome and heart defects. And she says he is sweet and precious as he could be, and they adore him. There's a picture of her. It's interesting when families are told, you know, that their child may have a condition like Down syndrome. They're often very much told only the negative parts of it. And this was a study done, the American Journal of Medical Genetics, and they actually asked people with Down syndrome, and 99% said they were happy with their lives, and 97% liked who they are, and 96% liked how they looked. 99% expressed love for their families, and 97% liked their brothers and sisters. Now that's way higher than the typical child. Those are 3 of my little friends. And it says, get this, some people think we're a burden. And that's a beautiful family who adopted 3 kids who have Down syndrome. So wisdom and sound moral guidance must lead us in these decisions. We have to get back to just realizing that every life is a gift from God and that God has a purpose for every life. This is my little son, Peter, and he was our 11th child. When I was 19 weeks pregnant, I went to the doctor for a routine ultrasound, and I was 43 years, and so considered an old lady. And the doctor said, well, we see some markers that are very concerning, and we think that your son might have a condition called trisomy 18. Trisomy 18 is similar to Down syndrome, which is trisomy 21, but more severe. The doctor told us that there were no survivors beyond 2 weeks with trisomy 18, and he wanted me to have an amnio. And I said, well, I'm not going to have an amnio. I'm not going to risk hurting this little baby just to find out. And then he said, well, you don't understand. You know, people, if he does have trisomy 18, you know, people don't continue these pregnancies, and you'll have more choices. You need to find out. And I said, well, if you're saying abortion, that's not going to be a choice for us anyway, so, you know, I don't need to know. And they wanted us to find out in the worst way, not for ourselves, but for them. Every doctor's visit, I was pressured to have that amnio, find out for sure. And I remember one nurse said to me, aren't you anxious? Don't you want to know so you can help your baby? And I said, listen, I'm going to help my baby no matter what. I'm very much at peace. I don't need to know. But I'm glad we didn't know. I don't think they would have given him the same care had we known. At 33 weeks, he had started slowing down moving in the womb, and they decided that they needed to do an emergency C-section. And he was delivered, and he was just a tiny little baby. He was only 3 pounds, 2 ounces. He was just a cute, sweet little boy. They gave him great care up until day 2 of his life, and at that point, the test results came back saying, yes, he did have full trisomy 18. And at that point, it was recommended that we stop all treatment. The doctor said, we'll wrap him up in a blanket, and you can hold him as he dies. And in the meantime, one of our daughters had gone on the internet, and she called me at the hospital, and she said, Mom, there are kids living with this. She said, there's even some adults with this. And I said, well, print off the stories and bring those up to the hospital. And so the next day when the doctor came in, I said, why did you lie to me? There are people living with this. You know, you said there were no survivors beyond 2 weeks. You know, look at the, I mean, she had stories of, 20-year-olds. I mean, people living. And he said, well, we have to think about resources. And he said, Peter will never contribute to society, and he will be a horrible, horrible burden to your family. And we recommend that you just, we'll keep him comfortable as he dies. And he was a little preemie. He had, he needed a little help breathing at first. And after we found out there were, surviving children, we wanted to help them. We wanted to give them a chance. We wanted to, do what we could. There was horrible pressure not to do that. They said he would live a life of horrible suffering and pain. One of the hardest conversations I had was with a woman doctor who came into my hospital room, and I had never met her before. Peter was born. And she said, I want to talk to you as a mother. She said, if you want to be a good mother, you've just got to let Peter go. She said, you can't bring him home to your family. She said, you can't do this to your other kids. And she said, you don't understand, your life is just going to be nothing but running back to the doctor and back and forth, and you're never going to be able to leave the house. And I remember thinking to myself, listen, lady, he's my 11th child. I never leave the house anyway with 10 kids. But I just cried. I couldn't even respond to her. I found that that's a very common tactic they use. Don't do this to your other children. Think of your other children. You're not going to have enough time for them. It's going to be bad for the whole family. It's going to be bad for your marriage. We were told he wouldn't recognize or interact with us. They made it sound like he wouldn't grow or develop in any way, which was totally false. We experienced so many lies in the hospital, and we kept on catching the doctor lying to us. She told us that we couldn't take Peter home unless we signed a DNR. We couldn't get home nursing care unless we signed a DNR. And so I called the home nursing care coordinator, and I asked her, is this true? Do I have to sign a DNR to get home nursing care when he comes home? And she said, well, no, of course not. And I said, well, has that ever been the case? And she said, no, that's never been the case. And so when I confronted the doctor with that, she said, well, they've changed their rules. And I said, no, I asked that. This has never been a rule. She was so angry with us. She told us Peter had a fatal heart defect, and that it was open heart surgery to fix his heart. And why would you want to crack his ribs and put him through this? He's not going to survive this. Well, somebody told me that this doctor was lying to me, so we took Peter's films of his heart to a pediatric cardiologist, and he just shook his head. He said, who told you his heart defect was fatal? And I said, well, the head of the NICU at the hospital. He shook his head. He said, no. He said, Peter's heart is stable and functional. He does need this 20-minute procedure, and that'll greatly help him. And he said it's not cracking his ribs, it's to close off a blood vessel called a PDA. And so he drew out this little picture of the heart and wrote down everything for us, and he arranged for us to have that surgery done. Well, when the doctor found out about that, she was just very angry. He had the procedure and did wonderful. He was only 2 weeks old when he had that. We were so concerned for his well-being at the hospital that we called the head of the University of Minnesota neonatology department, a professor who ran the whole department at the University of Minnesota. We said, can you give us a second opinion? We're worried about our son and the care he's getting. And he said, well, I'm too busy, but I'll look at his medical records, and I know that doctor actually taught her, and I'll give her a call. And so he looked over the records, and he called her, and he said, the family is concerned that you're not helping Peter reach his full potential. And anyway, when we came in that day, oh my gosh, she was so angry at us. She said, you are leaving my hospital. She said, you either take him to Children's Hospital, I have a bed waiting for you, or you can take him home. But she said, you're going to leave this department in my hospital. So she actually kicked us out of the hospital. And we decided we're going to bring him home. So we brought this little tiny boy home, 3 pounds, 10 ounces. We were told he was going to die. And we were told he would never be able to eat by mouth. Well, I just sat and held this little child on my chest for hours and hours. And I would see him sucking. And so I put some breast milk in a little tiny preemie bottle. I went to Babies R Us and got these little preemie bottles, and he learned how to eat by mouth. He ate by mouth his whole life. He grew and he grew, and he was an incredible joy to our family. We'd bring him to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician would say every time, he's going to die, be prepared. And finally I said to the doctor, when are you going to die? And he said, what? And I said, well, you're fond of telling me every time I come in here, Peter's going to die. I thought maybe you knew when you were going to die too. And he finally quit saying that. So he didn't die, he lived. He was a joy. He was the favorite of everybody. His 10 siblings loved him to pieces. They all took care of him. We have a nurse practitioner in the family now because of Peter, and one of his sisters is a special ed teacher because of Peter. And every one of them will say Peter was a great gift. Not one of them, I don't think, would say he was a negative or a burden in any way. So it was about a year after he was born, and it was actually after Mass, and it was a homily that the priest gave. So, Father, people do listen to homilies. And the priest said, are you doing God's will? And he said, Jesus is coming back, and how is he going to find you? Are you doing his will? And I went home and I prayed, and I just said, Lord, what do you want me to do with the experience of having Peter? And it was just this instant knowledge that I was supposed to try to help others. And so one of the first people I called was our Respect Life Director for our archdiocese. And she said, yes, this is so needed. And she said the abortion rate is huge for these little babies. We need a lot of help. So we put together a website, we have a Facebook page. Basically what we do is we offer support, information, and encouragement to other families, and we connect them with families for life-affirming support, families who already have had a child or have a child with the same thing. Their baby or child is diagnosed with. So we help families with any condition, and we try to match them up. We send out our beautiful little blankets and little lambs of life. And people love the gifts. Many times they're afraid, and they distance themselves from their baby. They're afraid to love this little baby who may have a very short or fragile life. So the gifts are important. I think they help the families bond with the baby. This was a little note we had from a family. And she said, I came home last night very down about things, and your box is waiting for me. I can't even begin to tell you how much that lifted me and my husband up to open the warm and caring note from you, the beautiful prayer cards, and the gifts for my baby. Because of the difficult nature of this and the grim and dismal attitudes of the medical professionals who believe termination is the answer, we haven't gotten anything for him. And it brought me to tears to know that someone out there can think of him as an actual baby whose life has meaning and value and a purpose, not just a broken child with poor prognosis and bad outcome. It was such a grace to receive, and I can't adequately express how much it meant to us. So we really try to help every family just embrace the life of their baby and let God be the author of that child's life. In a nutshell, we try to replace the fear with love. We give individual family grants, things not covered by insurance, maybe special formulas, a lot of gas cards. It's very hard if a family lives out in a rural area and they have to travel, 2 to 3 hours to get to the hospital or to get to doctor's appointments. We also offer hospital respite. We'll go in and we'll sit with a family, and the parents can leave. It's very important for someone to be there at all times. It really is, because these little kids, they can't speak for themselves, and so it's very important that families get worn out. We bring meals up to the hospital. I'll ask a family, what would you like? Sometimes it's Chipotle or Olive Garden, or they're just always very grateful to have something other than hospital food. We have beautiful little burial outfits that are made out of wedding gowns that we give to families. And we do a lot of marker grants. We also try to do a lot of education about the gift and the value these little kids bring to the world. That's a beautiful little book called Our Baby Died and Went to Heaven. We have it in Spanish, and that's a little poster a pro-life doctor asked us to make. And we also have a new teaching DVD that turned out very nice. And we give everything away for free, so if you would like anything and it's not up there, I can send it to you. I came across this little slide here that I thought I'd have to teach my child about the world, and it turns out I have to teach the world about my child. They see someone who cannot talk. I see him a miracle who doesn't need words. And that's, I guess, how we felt about Peter. He never spoke, but oh my gosh, did he teach us. He taught us so much. We do a lot of collaboration with great groups like Pro-Life Healthcare Alliance. And if you don't know about them, they're a committee of Human Life Alliance, which provides a forum for sharing resources toward the development of a referral service for pro-life healthcare professionals, facilities, and advisors. If you want any more information, they have a lot of information at the table. You can stop by and pick up a brochure, become a member, visit our website. I would say it's been just a great honor to be involved with PHA. They do wonderful, wonderful work, and what they do is so needed in this time. We've heard a lot of talk about eugenics. I see that mentality a lot. This is Peter and his little friend. They never spoke to each other in words, but boy, they sure communicated with each other, and they loved each other. And she's still living and doing really well. And the minute she sees me, she says very softly, Peter. She still remembers Peter. We have a page on our website called Second Thoughts, and it's moms who share their experience of aborting a little baby with special needs. And it's heart-wrenching, but these are some of their own words. She said, looking back, I can see what was missing from the conversation in the doctor's office. They never mentioned anything remotely positive. Surely there was something they could have told us that wasn't bleak and morbid, like the fact that we could love our daughter no matter what her physical and mental condition. The abortion will always be my darkest hour. I understand the medical community looks at these children as lost causes. It is easy to see things in black and white in the world of medicine, but I valued that child, and I was not heard. I was ganged up on, relentlessly pressured, and I was an emotional, hormonal, and physical wreck, and literally only days to make a choice. It was a nightmare. So that's a very, very common, that ganging up, that overly negative, perception of things, and people are afraid, and we're taught that we should be able to trust our doctors, but we really have to question things. And so many of the families, they're families of faith, and they just are frightened to death and think that's their only choice. I want to talk a little bit about perinatal hospice. It was pioneered by Dr. Byron Calhoun. And when perinatal hospice is available, up to 80% of parents facing a fatal anomaly of their unborn child would choose the perinatal option. It makes a huge difference, I think, to have that kind of help. This is the treasure of time, and this was a family we helped, and she said, our baby made such a wonderful impact on so many people. It was a true blessing. I cherished every second I was pregnant, and every second I spent with him until he passed into eternity. My biggest piece of advice to a new mother facing something like this is not to let the fear of the diagnosis scare you from seeing through to your child. A diagnosis isn't what a child is, it's just something he has. And parents are so grateful. That little girl had a condition called anencephaly, and she lived, I think less than an hour after birth. But they got pictures and videos, and the siblings met them. And so I think perinatal hospice was started with a pure motive. And many programs are good, but it really depends on who's running them. And just like the dangers with hospice at the end of life, there are dangers with perinatal hospice. We were told before even Peter was born, put him in hospice. We had a neighbor who was an anesthesiologist, and he said, don't put him in hospice. He said, you want to help Peter, right? You want to help him live, right? And we said, well, yeah. And he said, well, don't put him in perinatal hospice. He said, and that's what we found. I found that many times, you can't, these kids, they write their own story, and if you don't give them a chance, they're not going to be able to grow and develop if you're not treating them. And so some hospice programs, perinatal hospice programs, are good. They will, at the same time, provide treatment and curative therapies, with the baby, which is good. But some aren't, and we've ran into that a lot. A mom, the baby had a heart condition, and the baby got an ear infection. Well, they didn't want to give the baby even antibiotics to treat the ear infection because she was in this perinatal hospice program. Well, the baby ended up dying. She got very sick and turned into pneumonia, and she ended up dying. And so it can be dangerous. This is a picture of Rick and Karen Santorum. He ran for president. I don't know if anybody who recognizes his name, but we got to know them because they have a little daughter named Bella with trisomy 18, which is what Peter had. And they wrote a beautiful book called Bella's Gift. And in the book, they describe how they were sent home on hospice care, and how when they were sent home, Karen, who used to be an NICU nurse, asked for oxygen, and they didn't want to even give her oxygen, and she fought, but they did give them a prescription of morphine. And so when they got home, they had their own pediatrician come out to the house, and he looked at the prescription of morphine, and he said, oh my gosh, you didn't give this to her. It was like 3 times what you would give a baby for comfort. And he said, this could have killed her. And so it's very, we ran into that a lot, sending the families home with a prescription of morphine that's way, way over the top what you would give someone for comfort. And with these little kids, many of them are so tiny, and it depresses breathing, and, hastens her death. This is a doctor from the 1700s, and he said, if a physician presumes to take into consideration in his work whether a life has value or not, the consequences are boundless, and the physician becomes the most dangerous man in the state. That is what is happening. This is from an article called Lethal Language, Lethal Decisions from the Hastings Center. And it says, although many of the congenital syndromes that used to be lethal no longer are, they are still routinely referred to as lethal anomalies. But the label is not only inaccurate, it is also dangerous. By portraying as a medical determination what is in fact a judgment about the child's quality of life, it rests from the parents a decision that only parents can make. And that is what is happening. It's all about quality of life. What we were told, Peter's never going to have any quality of life. So what we ask for is clear, honest, accurate, and complete information. I did a talk at Creighton University to the students, and afterwards they came down and they said, it was medical students, nursing students, pharmacy students, and they came down and said, we just had our class in genetics, and we were told these kids don't live. And here you're showing us all these pictures. We were told it's incompatible with life these conditions are. And I said, well, sometimes these kids are very sick and they do have short lives, but not always. And, with Peter, I asked the doctor once, I said, how come with Peter, everything is described as aggressive? It was always, why do you want to do this aggressive care for Peter? And I said, if that same care was for any of my other children, it would just be routine care. But with Peter, it's aggressive care. And they make you seem like you're, nuts for wanting to do this when it's just really routine care. Many times parents are pressured not to pursue treatment at all. These are two of my little friends. They're both still living. Both have trisomy 18. The little boy, Caden, he is 15. And little Sarah there, I think she is 11. And at one point, Sarah's, when she was a baby, she got an infection. And the doctors told the parents, you don't have to treat this, infection. You can go ahead and just let her go, and I'll take the blame. The doctor said, you don't have to feel guilty if you say no for treating her. I'll take the blame. You just have to let me know. So I'm trying to, let the parents off the hook and, killing the child. So fear is often used as a tactic. One young mom we helped, her baby was starving to death, and she, I told her I brought a little NG tube with me because I had some of Peter's, and she was just giving the little baby syringes of food, and I said, why didn't you get an NG tube, to feed your baby? And she said, well, they said it would be painful, but then there's a big, huge tube. I didn't want to, do that to her, and so I bought one of the little tubes, and she's just like, that's it, well, I want that, This is this little tube. I said, your baby's much more uncomfortable, being hungry and crying, but they gave her morphine, so I told her to give the baby morphine when she was crabby, and all she really needed was to be fed. And so, I go to a lot of these ethics conferences that parents have at the hospital, these meetings, and there was a child there we were helping in the family, and it's very intimidating. It's oftentimes the family, the mom or the dad, or sometimes a single mom, and in a room of 20, 30 medical people, and so I'll go with them. And one doctor, this little girl needed a very minor procedure to help her diaphragm be tacked down into place so she could breathe better. And it would help her quality of life, it would be good. And the doctor said, well, we could fix her diaphragm, we could even fix her heart, but why should we? Because we can't fix her brain. And the parents were so upset. Every time we'd have these EIP meetings, our IEP, for the school district getting services for Peter, you have to have the meetings with all the OTs, the PTs, the speech therapies, and they come to your house and they do this educational plan for your child. And they'd always tell me how Peter's so significantly physically disabled and so significantly cognitively disabled. But I always throw in there, but he's spiritually superior to all of you, and me too. So, it's also negative, but we looked at him as, a little bit of heaven on earth. I mean, he truly was a precious child, and many of these kids, they might not go out and whatever, contribute to the bottom line, but they contribute to the soul of society, the most important part, our well-being, our compassion. They teach us so many things. So many of these doctors believe that it's a big, huge waste of money to treat these kids, but our whole thing is these kids have a place in the world, and it's a very, very important place. This was a study done in pediatrics on children with trisomy 18 and 13, and 97% of the parents described their child as a happy child, and 98% reported these children enriched their family. So it's just the opposite of what parents are being told. 89% reported that the overall experience of their child's life was positive, and 82% felt that this child had a positive effect on siblings. And I really think if families got more support from the medical community, these numbers would be a lot higher even. But oftentimes families are told that, like we were, there's no living kids with these. I thought, Peter's going to die after 2 weeks. There's no other living children. With these, they're all dead. And if my daughter wouldn't have gone on the internet, I would not have known, that these kids looked, because I trusted the doctors. This was the same group of doctors that helped deliver my 3 previous children. And I looked at them as friends. I looked at them, I thought for sure I can trust these people. I would bring in a box of candy to them and my 6-week follow-up. And when I found out that something was wrong with Peter, I thought, they're really going to take good care of me. They're really going to help Peter. And it was just the opposite. The only help they wanted to give was to end his life. That was the help they wanted to give. That was their solution. So, we were told basically Peter would not do anything. He did a ton of stuff. He knew us, loved us, laughed. You could tell who he liked and who he didn't like. The doctors, he would just kind of shut down, many of them. He communicated, he would get mad. He had red curly hair. He was a little spunky kid. He was the first thing everybody went to in the morning when they'd get up, all the siblings, and the last thing everybody went to at night before they went to bed. It was your little brother, always making sure, kissing him and hugging him and giving him anything he needed. So the conclusion of this study was that trisomy 13 and 18 are not legal conditions, and further research is necessary to identify children who will benefit from interventions. Children with postnatal diagnoses were treated as any other children at birth, and this gave them a survival advantage despite later palliative care. So it's often detrimental to the child if the family knows ahead of time that they have this, because then many times that care is not provided. I don't think we would have been given an emergency C-section. They would have just let him die in the womb, and they would have said, this is what happens. So we see a lot of euthanasia. That's little Peter. He even smiled in his sleep. He was a very happy little kid. And this is my friend Annie. She lives in Canada, and she has a very sad story. She had a condition called trisomy 13, and after she died, her mom got the medical records, and she found that a DNR was placed in Annie's chart without their knowledge or consent. And also that morphine and fentanyl were drawn, but the final medication sheet was missing. And the coroner stated that the care was not appropriate. And Dr. Byrne, a neonatologist, said that the manner of her death could not be determined. They knew she was given too much narcotics, and they really feel that is why she was killed. This is a picture of me and my husband after Peter died, and we are saying to each other what happened. In August of 2011, he went into the hospital. It was determined that he needed to have his appendix removed, and we were concerned. Any surgery for kids with conditions, you have to be very thoughtful about the risks and benefits. But we thought, well, if he's not going to have it, then he'll end up dying. And so they ended up taking out his appendix. Afterwards, the doctor came out and he said, Peter did great, his heart did great, we got all the infection, everything looked wonderful. We had a Catholic priest with us who waited through the surgery, a good friend, and he went home, he said, okay, give you guys a blessing, and he left us. And the next morning, we saw Peter's abdomen getting bigger and bigger, and we asked, what that was. And I had seen the critical care doctor was caring for him, pressing on his incision very, very hard. And I said, are you supposed to be pressing on his incision like that? And he yelled at me, he snapped at me, and he said, your son is filled with infection. He's got 600 million germs in his body right now. He's a very sick boy. And I said, what do you mean? The surgeon said he got all the infection out. No, your son is very ill, very ill. Well, my husband went home to take the kids to Mass, and I was there with Peter alone, and all of a sudden all those alarms went off. And the doctor had done an ultrasound of his abdomen and said that it's air in his abdomen. Well, Peter was dead a couple hours later, and I told them, I said, get my husband back up here, do CPR until he gets here. And my husband rushed back up, and 4 of our kids followed him in another car. And he came into the hospital room and he said to the doctor, what happened? And the doctor said, well, the infection killed him in his heart. He just couldn't take it. And we knew something was horribly wrong. We had to go out and tell the 4 youngest kids that Peter was dead, and it was horrible. They all just started screaming. One daughter fainted. One son threw up all over. They were inconsolable. It was a horrible, horrible thing. We knew something was very, very wrong with how he died. When we were planning his funeral, the coroner asked, how did your son die? Because it was a 6.5-year-old boy. And we said, well, he died after having his appendix removed. And she said, my goodness, you don't hear that very often. And she said, did you have an autopsy? And we said, well, they asked us if we wanted one, but we said no, because we don't trust that hospital. We don't trust these doctors. And she said, well, you can have an independent autopsy done. And we had not thought of that, but we said, okay. And so we called the coroner in another county, and they came to get his body, and the coroner, she said, I just want to caution you many times, I don't find anything wrong. And I said, well, I hope you find nothing wrong. I hope, that you do not find anything wrong, and everything, what they said is true. And she called us back a few hours later, and she said, I'm shocked by what I found. She said, your son bled to death. He had a liter of blood in his abdomen, and that was the stomach, so big. And I said, are you telling me Peter didn't have to die? And she said, yes, I believe Peter didn't have to die. Anyway, that was incredibly hard to hear. I told my story. I had a good friend working out at the state capitol, and she was a legislative assistant to a senator. And she said, come down and tell the senator your story, what happened. And so I did. And there was a lawyer with him. And the lawyer, for 30 years, was the head lawyer of the Minnesota Hospital Association. And so for 30 years, he was the hospital's lawyer. And he said, I want to tell you what I think happened. He said, I think somebody just decided it was time to let Peter go. And they just let him go. And so the senator said, well, we need to, the lawyer also said, at the hospital where your son died, they have an internal futility of care policy. And we had never heard of that. And he said, yeah, it's an internal policy. Most of the public doesn't know about it, but it's a futility of care policy. And so the senator said, well, we need to make this public. So he wrote a bill called the Minnesota Hospital Futility Disclosure Policy, making it a law in Minnesota that if a hospital has a futility policy, that they at least have to let the public know about it, and it has to be posted on the Minnesota Department of Health. It has to be out in the open. So I testified to the Minnesota State and Senate, told Peter's story, and I can't outright accuse them of murder, but I asked the question, was my son the victim of this hospital's futility of care policy? And I really believe he was. And they had a lot of lawyers there and arguing that, no, it's internal, we have it, but we don't want to tell people about it because we don't want to scare parents. And, well, anyway, it passed both the House and the Senate, but it was vetoed. Our Dayton would not sign it, so hopefully if we ever have a change in leadership, maybe we can try again. My friend Julie told me about a federal law on advanced directives, so notification must be given, but many times, it's not, people are not notified. Doctors from the hospital where Peter died at were even going to the senator's office saying, our hospital does not have this policy. Now, I work at this hospital, it doesn't have this. And then they'd come back again after doing some investigation and saying, oh, yeah, I guess it does. I just didn't know about it. So many of the doctors didn't know about it. I think, in my mind, it's the doctors, their little euthanasia team, they're the ones who know about it. The ones who carry out these horrible deaths. We're living in a culture of death, and the work that PHA does and many of the people here is so important. Belgium just euthanized their first child. I think it's happened before, but this is the one that's probably the only one that's gone. They've admitted publicly to. So we have all of this going on. I listened to a talk from the doctor and lawyer, he's both a doctor and lawyer, from the Netherlands, who wrote this Groningen protocol. And he's here every year at our American Bioethics conferences pushing his country's infant euthanasia, program that they have. And listening to him was just chilling. He described how they have gotten so good at identifying babies before birth so they can be aborted that they hardly ever have to use this infant euthanasia. But he described, the few times a year where, they do end up euthanizing a baby or a child. It's very, very sad. Pope Francis said, whenever human beings fail to care for creation and for our brothers and sisters, the way is open to destruction and hearts are hardened. I think that's what we have, a lot of hard hearts. I call these kids teachers of our souls. And there's Peter. He was very happy all the time, playing with his siblings. So that's what we try to teach, just the blessings and the lessons. And these kids are a tremendous source of grace and love and happiness for their families. Not that it's always easy, but God provides. He gives a grace. Our family came together and everybody pitched in and everybody helped. And, it never felt like it was a burden or too much. I really believe that, when we support one another, it's possible. So that's what we try to do. We try to help families and support them. And I got to say, when Peter was alive, everybody was much better behaved. These two boys are 16 and 18 now. I wish Peter was still here because he had such a good effect on everybody. Peter's sister Christine said he taught me so many important lessons in life: how to love, have faith, be strong, trust in God, and also not to be selfish and complain. I mean, I think they looked at their little brother who, had to work so hard to do things that we take for granted, and they didn't complain. They realized, the gift of their little brother, the gift of every day, the gift of life, how precious that was. Beth, big sister to Michelle, said she taught me that you just need to take it day by day and trust that God will lead you through it. And she has 7 children now. She said, Peter's main occupation was giving and receiving love. He's the only person I've ever known who honestly never hurt another human being. I can't think of a life better lived. Ian said, Gianna had the powerful capacity to inspire love in others through her connection, the pure and innocent connection to God. And Elizabeth's mom says her life is a gift, a precious gift, and she's going to teach us about life and love and God in ways we can't even imagine. Thank you, Lord, for the treasure you have given us in Elizabeth. We are blessed. And I say Peter was a perfect reflection of the pure and unconditional love of God, and that's what he did best. He just loved. He just loved and received love, and it was just a tremendous, tremendous gift. So that's what we try to do. We just try to help our families see through the fear and look to the blessing that their baby is, no matter how long they live. Because we know that love transforms everything. So that's our main mission, spreading the love of these little lives and spreading the love of every life. And every little gift we send out, I write a little note, and I say, God has a plan and a purpose for every life, even if that life is short, and that God loves you and is with you. You're not alone. So that's what we do. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you very much.
I have to say this is one of the most loving families I've ever met. We're going to have a short break, and then you are going to hear an incredible presentation by Jennifer Heyman. Every time I've been in a group and repeated even a tiny part of her story, the response is usually, oh, it's just incredible. So, as I said, we have to leave. A few people have to leave for the airport. I just would like to recognize at this point Julie Grimstead and Ann Olson. Ann, would you please stand up? They just did an incredible amount of work to get this organized, and thank you so much. Now we'll have a short break. Did you have a question?
If you want to start right away, so those who need to leave can at least hear part of the message.
Is anybody tired or sick and you want to just get up and stretch for 5 minutes and grab a drink or something, and then Jennifer can start? So 5 minutes. Yep, 5 minutes. 5 minutes. At 1:45.